At Buckingham Palace, the royal guards are known for their discipline, their composure, and their unwavering silence. But what happens when someone crosses the line? One bold tourist reached out, snatched a guard's bearskin hat, and within seconds, the atmosphere changed. What followed left the entire crowd gasping and showed the world exactly why these soldiers are never to be underestimated. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and let us know in the comments, which country are you watching from? It was an ordinary summer afternoon outside Buckingham Palace. The sun glistened over the grand golden gates, and hundreds of tourists had gathered on the forecourt, cameras in hand, eager to catch a glimpse of the famous royal guards. The guards stood in their usual formation, tall, disciplined, and dressed in their iconic red tunics and tall black bearskin hats. To most visitors, they seemed almost like statues, silent, motionless, and completely unaffected by the noisy chatter around them. Children tugged at their parents' hands, tourists posed for photos, and street performers played music in the background. But amidst the sea of onlookers, one woman had a different plan. At first, she seemed like any other tourist, laughing, joking with her friends, weaving her way through the crowd. She had an adventurous energy about her, the kind of boldness that often leads people to test boundaries they shouldn't. As she moved closer to the guard standing at his post near the gate, whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Everyone knew the unspoken rule. Don't touch the guards. Don't distract them. Don't cross the invisible line. Yet, this woman seemed unconcerned. She edged closer, her phone in one hand as if pretending to take a selfie. But her eyes were locked on the tall black bearskin hat, a symbol of centuries of tradition, discipline, and authority. To her, it looked like a challenge, an opportunity to stir excitement, to get that one viral moment her friends would never forget. The guard, as always, remained motionless. His rifle slung firmly across his shoulder, his gaze fixed straight ahead, he gave no sign of noticing her approach. His training had prepared him for exactly this. To ignore distractions, to remain a soldier first and foremost, even in the face of mischief. But the crowd noticed. People began pulling out their phones, sensing that something unusual was about to happen. A few onlookers muttered warnings. "Don't do it. She's going too far." But the woman only grinned, clearly reveling in the attention. Then, in one swift, reckless motion, she lunged forward, her hand reaching up toward the guard's hat. In a flash, the bearskin shifted. Gasps erupted across the crowd. She had done the unthinkable. She had grabbed the guard's hat, and in that instant, the entire atmosphere changed. The guard's rigid stance snapped into motion. His boot slammed against the cobblestones with a thunderous stomp, the kind that echoed across the forecourt. His rifle shifted with practiced precision as he barked out a command, a sound so sharp, so commanding, that it froze the crowd in place. The once laughing woman stumbled back, her grin faltering as realization set in. She hadn't just crossed a line. She had shattered one of the most sacred rules of the royal guards, and she was about to learn exactly what that meant. The crowd stood frozen in disbelief. For a moment, the scene seemed unreal, as if time itself had paused. A woman had just touched a royal guard's bearskin hat, something most tourists wouldn't even dream of attempting. The sound of the guard's boot slamming against the ground snapped everyone out of their daze. It was sharp, commanding, and carried with it centuries of military tradition. The sound. It wasn't just noise, it was a warning. The woman's smile wavered as the guard's rifle shifted with precision, the metallic click of his weapon echoing faintly. His voice, usually reserved for commands, cut through the air like a blade. "Stand back!" It wasn't loud for the sake of volume. It was loud with authority. His words carried the weight of someone who had been drilled, trained, and entrusted with defending not just the palace, but the dignity of the crown itself. The crowd gasped. Cameras rose higher, phones now recording from every angle. Parents pulled their children closer, instinctively recognizing that the playful atmosphere of a tourist attraction had suddenly turned into something much more serious. The woman, however, laughed nervously, as though trying to brush off the incident as a joke. She glanced back at her friends, expecting them to cheer her on, to validate her daring stunt. But instead, she saw wide eyes and hushed whispers. Even her own friends looked uneasy. What she hadn't realized And what many in the crowd didn't understand was that royal guards are not just ceremonial ornaments. They may look like statues in red coats, but behind the discipline is a fully trained soldier. Every guard is part of an active regiment, ready to act when needed. Their rifles aren't props. Their commands aren't for show. And by touching the guard's hat, she had violated one of the most unbreakable rules of all. Respect the guard's personal space and duty. The tension built like a storm about to break. Another stomp echoed as the guard repositioned himself. His composure never faltered, but his presence now radiated warning. Every subtle movement, the grip on his rifle, the stance of his boots, was a reminder that she was seconds away from facing very real consequences. The crowd began to murmur louder now. She's in trouble. They're going to arrest her. She doesn't realize how serious this is. Meanwhile, the woman tried to wave it off. She raised her hands as though to say, all right, relax. But the ripple effect of her action was already in motion. From across the courtyard, a police officer began making his way through the crowd. Unlike the guards, who remain in formation unless a situation demands otherwise, police are stationed around the palace precisely for these moments, when someone forgets or deliberately disrespects the rules. People's phones turned from the guard to the approaching officer. The energy had shifted from amusement to suspense. The woman, who had once been basking in attention, now found herself the center of a very different kind of spotlight. The guard, true to his discipline, returned to his post once he had reasserted his authority. His face gave away nothing. His silence was more intimidating than any words could have been. He didn't need to argue or explain. His actions alone told the story. The line had been crossed, and punishment was inevitable. For the crowd, the moment had become more than just entertainment. It was a lesson, playing out in real time. The guards, so often underestimated as photo props for tourists, had just reminded everyone that they were soldiers first and symbols second. The woman's smirk was gone now. As the officer closed the distance, the weight of her choice began to settle in. She had wanted a story to take home, and she was about to get one, but it wasn't the kind she had hoped for. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder as the police officer approached, weaving through the sea of tourists who had gathered near the gates. Phones were up high now, recording from every possible angle. What had started as a careless stunt was quickly becoming a spectacle no one wanted to miss. The woman, who only moments earlier had laughed and brushed off the guard's stern command, was now shifting uncomfortably. The confident grin that once stretched across her face began to falter as she realized this was no longer just a joke. The guard stood motionless again, his rifle held firmly at his side, his gaze fixed ahead. It was as if the entire exchange had never happened, but his earlier warning stomp and booming voice still hung in the air, replaying in everyone's minds. His silence now made the scene even more tense. The police officer reached the woman and immediately positioned himself between her and the guard. His tone was sharp, professional, but also unmistakably firm. "Madam, step away, now!" The crowd hushed. Every eye was fixed on the unfolding drama. The woman raised her hands slightly, as if to surrender without resistance. She muttered something under her breath, half smiling, trying to make it seem like a misunderstanding. But the officer wasn't buying it. He leaned closer, speaking so only she could hear, though the sternness of his body language said enough. "You've interfered with an officer of the guard," he said, quietly but clearly. "This is not tolerated." The weight of those words struck her harder than any shout could have. She glanced nervously at the group of friends who had egged her on. None of them laughed now. Their phones were still recording, but their faces showed regret. The officer took her arm gently but firmly, signaling her to move aside. The crowd gasped. This wasn't a staged moment. This wasn't part of the show. This was real, and the woman was facing genuine consequences. Several onlookers whispered, "Is she going to jail? Did she really just touch his hat?" She's lucky he didn't react more. What many in the crowd didn't realize was that the guard himself wouldn't break formation further. His role was to defend, deter, and act only if the situation escalated to a physical threat. Once the immediate danger was neutralized, protocol dictated that the police, stationed nearby for this very reason, would take over. The officer led the woman away for turn on the guard's post, but she resisted slightly, her voice louder now. "Come on, it was just a joke," she protested. Her tone carried hints of panic, her earlier confidence entirely gone. The crowd didn't sympathize. Instead, many shook their heads, muttering about respect and consequences. Parents whispered warnings to their children, using the moment as a lesson. That's why you never touch the guards. Ever. The woman's resistance only made things worse. The officer's patience was wearing thin. He stopped, turned her to face him, and in a low but unmistakably serious tone said, "This is not optional. You need to cooperate." Those words silenced her. Her protests died down, replaced by nervous glances at the dozens of cameras pointed her way. She wasn't just facing the law. She was facing the court of public opinion, immortalized in countless viral videos that would soon spread across social media. Meanwhile, the guard stood firm, his eyes fixed forward. To him, this was nothing out of the ordinary. A disruption handled swiftly, and duty carried on without interruption. The crowd's admiration for him grew with every passing second. His composure, his refusal to break character beyond what was necessary, reminded everyone of the discipline and training that defined the role. As the officer escorted the woman further away, whispers rippled across the gathering. "They'll probably fine her. She might actually get arrested. Can you imagine explaining this back home?" The woman's earlier bravado had turned into humiliation. She kept her head low now, realizing she had become the example everyone else would remember. The officer radioed in briefly, signaling for additional support. Within moments, a second officer joined them, ensuring the situation didn't escalate further. Together, they guided her through the crowd, their presence calm but commanding. The tourists parted like water around a ship, clearing a path as the group moved away from the guard's post. The sound of boots on cobblestones echoed in the quiet, a reminder of the seriousness of the moment. Behind them, the guard resumed his silent vigil, unshaken, unmoved. To him, it was just another day. To the crowd, it was a story they would never forget. The day a tourist crossed the line, and discipline answered without hesitation. For the woman, however, the lesson was only just beginning. As the officers escorted the woman away from Buckingham Palace's gates, the crowd quickly filled the silence with chatter. What had just unfolded was no ordinary scene. For many tourists, this was their once-in-a-lifetime visit to London, and they had witnessed a moment that would soon ripple far beyond the palace courtyard. Phones stayed raised, their cameras zooming in to capture every step of the woman's removal. Parents pulled their children closer, whispering in tones that carried both caution and fascination. "That's why you never mess with the guards." In the digital age, it only took seconds for the incident to spread. A teenager in the crowd was already live-streaming, narrating in excited tones. "Yo, she just grabbed the guard's hat, and now she's being arrested. This is insane. It's happening right now." Within minutes, clips started circulating on social media platforms. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts. The footage was being replayed, dissected, and shared across the globe. The angles varied, but the story was the same. A tourist had crossed the line, and the guard's unshakable discipline had made the moment unforgettable. But beyond the laughs and shocked reactions, there was another layer building: outrage. Thousands of commenters expressed their frustration at the blatant disrespect shown to the guard. Imagine travelling to another country and making a fool of yourself like this. These soldiers are at their posts for hours in all weather, and you think it's okay to touch them. Glad the police stepped in. She deserved it. The woman, once laughing with her friends, was now becoming the subject of international scrutiny. The internet is relentless, and within hours, her face was circulating on dozens of channels. For her, the embarrassment was only beginning. Meanwhile, back at the palace gates, the guard remained unflinching, embodying the very essence of discipline. Tourists who had once come only to take cheerful photos were now staring at him with renewed respect. It was as though they had all been reminded that the guards were not just performers in a tourist attraction. They were soldiers, tasked with upholding centuries of tradition and protecting one of the most recognized palaces in the world. Small children asked questions aloud. Why did she try to take his hat? Is he angry? Parents used the moment to explain. That's not a costume. He's a soldier. You must respect them. The story also caught the attention of international media. News outlets picked up the clips, giving them sensational headlines. Tourist arrested after disrespecting Buckingham Palace guard. Discipline versus disruption. Palace. Guard incident sparks global debate. Some networks invited military experts to discuss what had happened. Analysts pointed out how professional the guard had been, breaking his silence only long enough to deter the threat, then resuming his post with flawless discipline. To them, it was a perfect example of training and control under pressure. Others speculated on the legal outcome for the woman. While she was unlikely to face severe punishment, the arrest alone would follow her long after her trip ended. She would return home, not with happy vacation memories, but with a story of humiliation at eyes, shed to her name. Interestingly, the incident sparked broader conversations about respect for traditions worldwide. People drew parallels to their own countries, pointing out that disrespecting soldiers, police, or ceremonial figures carried consequences everywhere, and that traveling abroad came with a responsibility to honor the culture and customs of the host nation. For the woman's friends, the fallout was equally uncomfortable. The videos showed them laughing during the stunt, egging her on. Now, commenters directed their anger toward them too. You stood there recording instead of stopping her. Some friends you are. The group had intended to capture a funny moment for social media. Instead, they became the villains of their own story. Back at the palace, order quickly returned. The crowd slowly dispersed, though the story lived on in every whispered conversation, every uploaded clip. The guard remained, silent and steadfast, as if nothing had ever happened. But for those who witnessed it, the memory was indelible. The public fallout wasn't confined to the courtyard or even the news cycle. The ripple effect of that one foolish action would last far longer than anyone could have predicted. For the guard, it was just another day of duty. For the woman, it was the beginning of an infamy she would never escape. The footage of the woman snatching the guard's bearskin hat did not remain a London story for long. Within 24 hours, clips were trending on platforms around the globe. People in the US, Australia, Canada, India and beyond weighed in, their reactions divided but passionate. On one side were those who found the incident shocking but strangely entertaining. Memes emerged almost instantly, edited videos of the woman replaced with cartoon characters, or exaggerated captions like, "Mission failed, tourist tried to join the army." Social media thrives on humor, and for a brief window, she became the centerpiece of global internet comedy. But on the other side, was a much louder, more serious conversation. Respect. Cultural commentators and ordinary people alike stress the importance of respecting traditions, especially those with deep historical and military roots. The Royal Guards weren't actors on a stage. They were trained soldiers, representing not just Buckingham Palace, but the United Kingdom itself. A viral comment on Twitter, now X, summed it up perfectly. Traveling isn't just about taking pictures. It's about respecting the culture. Imagine walking into someone's home and mocking their family. That's what this tourist did. This line struck a chord, and soon articles and blog posts were echoing the same sentiment. Travel comes with responsibility. Educators and cultural travel bloggers quickly seized on the moment. Videos appeared with titles like "How Not to Behave at Buckingham Palace" and "Respecting Traditions When You Travel." Travel agencies even shared etiquette guides for tourists, highlighting how to behave around ceremonial figures and sacred sites. The incident, embarrassing as it was for the woman, became a global teaching moment. Many parents showed the video to their children, turning it into a lesson about respect and consequences. Military figures from other countries also weighed in, some even sharing parallels from their own nations. In the US, comparisons were made to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Arlington, where guards also maintain strict discipline and are never to be mocked. In Japan, people pointed out the deep respect given to imperial guards and Shinto ceremonies. In India, viewers compared the situation to the solemnity of the Wagah border ceremony, where soldiers are treated with awe, not mockery. The lesson was universal. Ceremonial guards aren't there for entertainment. They symbolize something bigger than any one person. Interestingly, as the days passed, attention shifted away from the tourist's foolish stunt and toward the guard's reaction. The more people watched the clips, the more they marveled at his restraint. He had every right to react forcefully the moment his hat was grabbed, yet he chose control over chaos. His minimal movement, his instant return to position, and his unbroken focus impressed millions. Comments poured in praising his professionalism. That man deserves a medal for not even flinching. This is the embodiment of discipline. The guard didn't just protect the hat, he protected the dignity of the uniform. For many viewers, the guard became the quiet hero of the story, a symbol of how centuries of discipline and training remain unshaken even in the age of viral chaos. Meanwhile, the woman at the center of it all faced consequences far beyond what she had likely imagined. Her name wasn't officially released, but in the internet age, anonymity is nearly impossible. Clips were slowed down, her face zoomed in, and before long, online sleuths claimed to have identified her. She became the subject of ridicule, her social media pages, real or misidentified, flooded with angry comments and memes. Her friends who filmed the stunt didn't escape either. They too were blamed for encouraging her behavior and doing nothing to stop it. For the group, what began as a vacation prank ended as an international scandal. As the global conversation grew, Buckingham Palace itself stayed silent, as it often does regarding public disturbances. But it didn't need to say a word. The guard's actions had spoken volumes. Travel writers summed it up simply. Traditions are not tourist attractions, they are living symbols of a nation's pride and history. The viral moment served as a sharp reminder that while the world is increasingly interconnected, respect for local culture remains just as important as ever. For the guard, the day passed like any other. He remained silent, immovable, the weight of history resting on his shoulders. But for everyone watching, whether in person or online, it was a powerful story of discipline, disrespect, and the global lessons we can all learn. In the end, what started as a foolish stunt by a tourist became so much more than just another viral clip. The woman's reckless decision to snatch a royal guard's bearskin hat turned into a global reminder of respect, discipline, and tradition. For the woman, the incident was humiliating. She faced arrest, ridicule, and a wave of online backlash that followed her far beyond the gates of Buckingham Palace. What she thought would be a funny video to show her friends instead became a cautionary tale, a reminder that actions have consequences, especially when disrespect is aimed at something symbolic and sacred. For the guard, however, the moment highlighted everything that makes his role extraordinary. He didn't just protect a piece of uniform, he protected the dignity of centuries-old tradition. His calm, unwavering focus under pressure became the real story. Millions of people admired his ability to embody discipline at a time when many might have reacted with anger or aggression. His silence and composure spoke louder than words. And for the rest of the world, the clip served as a cultural mirror. It reminded us that no matter how connected our world becomes through technology, respect for traditions remains universal. Every country, every culture has its own symbols of pride. From soldiers standing guard to sacred ceremonies passed down through generations. To mock them is not just to disrespect the people in front of us, but to disregard history itself. Perhaps the greatest lesson from this incident is one for travelers everywhere. When we visit other countries, we're stepping into someone else's home. Their traditions may feel unfamiliar, even strange, but they carry meaning far deeper than what meets the eye. A uniform, a ceremony, a ritual, all of these represent the blood, sweat, and sacrifice of generations. Respect costs nothing, but its absence can cost everything.